Hey everybody, we're Pole DFS. I'm Ricky.
I'm Keaton.
And we're going to talk about the PGA Championship in Kiawah.
Yeah, just down
our
the
neighboring
road
state.
In South Carolina, yeah.
What a state it is.
And it sounds like they'll have some fans in the stands, and mostly business as normal down in South Carolina.
There will be no masks.
Probably not, South Carolina.
Never seen a mask in South Carolina.
But yeah, can't wait to get into this DFS play this week. It's a big play, lots of big tournaments, and lots of opportunity. So, real quick, starting off with our weekly show beer, our Over the Edge from Unknown Brewing here in Charlotte, Solid IPA.
OTE IPA. It's a lot of periods.
Yes, it used to not be that hype, but I still say the original Over the Edge over there.
It used to not be what?
That hype. It didn't be that cool. Wasn't that cool of a can? So, but yeah, thanks to our viewers. Like and subscribe, and let us know down below who you think's going to win this week. It's a wide open field and an awesome tournament. So I think there can be a lot of people in contention this week.
As we go through, we will talk about Keaton's another good week. He is on
knock on wood.
But that's okay. Then we will run through the actual tournament. We'll talk about some construction strategy. That'll be Keaton, obviously. I'll probably take a nap during that part. We'll talk about some Vegas favorites. We'll talk about some Vegas sleepers, our player pools, and then our picks. Going into last week, talk about it.
Yeah. Followed up last week. I finished 7th in the Eagle on FanDuel. This week I finished 2nd in the Eagle for 10K. Bounced around even down to that last hole. Needed Charles to finish with that birdie that he did, and KH to finish with his birdie as well to move up a couple spots from 4th to 2nd. So that was awesome finish, and another awesome week. And when we talk about a little bit longer or a little bit later in the slides, kind of some roster construction and things I'm thinking about when I'm building rosters. I know I've been on an insane heater, which is mostly involving just extreme luck, let's be fair. But there are a few things to at least give yourself an opportunity to put yourself in a position to get lucky at least. And so we'll talk about that, especially this week with some of the massive tournaments on DraftKings, and even FanDuel has bigger than normal tournaments for the PGA Championship.
Perfect. Yeah.
On to the PGA Championship.
Yeah. We are in Kiawah Island, as we talked about. South Carolina, our neighbors to the south. It is a holy cow, that's a long course.
Yeah. So I've heard rumblings on Twitter that one day they should push back some of the tee boxes and get it to a solid 8,000 yards on the scorecard, which would be pretty awesome. But yeah, 78-76 is the official yardage right now, par 72. You'll see on the next slide, it is an absolutely gorgeous layout all along the ocean. Truly is an ocean course. I think you can see the ocean. They said beach views on 6 of the 18 holes. But as you'll see from this overhead shot, they all almost run parallel to the ocean.
Unless your eyes are terrible, you should probably be able to see that.
I think because the elevation changes and the way that the dunes run along, you can't actually see the
changes in South Carolina.
There is quite a few tabletop, they call them, greens, and there is a decent amount of elevation change. They really tore up this area to make this course. I mean, you can't talk about serious elevation change, but for being next to the ocean, there's some decent changes, some tabletop greens. You'll see from this next picture, if it is not the fairway, it is either extremely thick, like marsh grass, or actual marsh, or just sand. And so it is pretty tough. And for one of the things I'm looking at this week is going to be accuracy off the tee, because I think you need to make it in the fairway in order to make greens in regulation and to have a decent score. The winning score here is probably going to be, we'll see, Rory won.
Unless you're Rory.
In 2012. He won by 8 strokes.
That's what we want to see this week as well.
Minus 13, but the next closest was minus 5. That David Lynn was minus 5, and the Keegan group was minus 4. And so there is, this will be much different than last week, the Birdie Fest that we saw last week at the AT&T event. I expect much, much, much lower scoring.
Yeah, cool.
So Morikawa is technically our defending champion, but not at this course. So
I mean, yeah,
but he is our defending champion. So
and like I said, unless your eyesight's bad, you should be able to see the water.
You can see the water. I think the beach is what they said. You can see the beach from 6 of the 18 holes. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, that's very cool how it runs along runs along the ocean.
But you can see here pretty much everything that is not at least fairway or that first cut of rough is pretty much sand.
Not fun.
Yeah, so it should be
Don't
really
want to go
interesting. Quite a few inland marshes as well. You can see quite a few waters in play on most of these holes. There's quite a few that cut across. And the interesting thing about being on the coast with beach winds, even Pat Mayo in his article this afternoon said the forecast, the wind forecast between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. had already changed significantly, projected winds. So this is probably something that I guess they tee off at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard on Thursday morning.
Is there a benefit? Is it morning, evening when you're looking at, or is it just going to be like look at the draw at what time it is?
Yeah, so I think there is a fair amount of luck in the draw. So for Showdown, I would check daily what the weather pattern is, and I would probably tend to stack golfers in the more favorable time. As a general rule, it's calmer in the mornings, windier in the afternoons at the ocean, but there can be really anything. And some days will be more mild. So initially when I looked at the forecast, it was like 8 to 10 mile-an-hour winds in the morning with like maybe 10 to 12 in the afternoon. So not a huge difference, and kind of my thought is like anything less than 15 I sort of ignore. 15 is where it sort of starts to affect players, and anything more than 15 certainly is affecting gameplay. But with anything under 12 like that, I would have disregarded wind. But as Pat Mayo pointed out in his article this afternoon, it looked like Friday afternoon tee times were going to be pretty severely impacted with like 17 or 18, even up to 20 mile-an-hour winds. And in that case, I probably would want to lean heavier on the golfers that had that morning wave, late Thursday wave.
That makes sense.
So I will probably err, unless there's a clear advantage when I'm building rosters or lineups Wednesday night, I probably will build 20 with AM waves, 20 with PM waves, and the rest just kind of ignoring start times.
There we go. The Ocean Course. It is an American Ocean Links course. They really lean in on the ocean side.
They love the ocean. It is. It's sort of the defining factor at this course, right?
Yeah, you can definitely see water.
From at least 6 to 18 holes. But it's a Pete Dye course, so I jokingly put it Siwoo Week. He is actually, though, someone that does play well on Pete Dye courses. So, and we did just see Justin Thomas win at the PGA, or the Players on a Pete Dye, a long Pete Dye course as well. So, if JT can find his putter, watch out. It looks like it's clear right now, but again, ocean forecast can always change, so keep an eye on that.
Yeah. One thing I think you noted a little bit of when we were talking just about the course itself is the driving accuracy, how important that is. Maybe that's something to look at on top of, the combination of driving distance with driving accuracy. So maybe not Bryson.
Yeah, so I am worried about Bryson, but he is actually like the prototypical player that I think initially you look at 7,800 yards and you're like, let's go.
Par 67.
Someone barked at him last week after he hit a thing and he leaned over to the guy. It was very nerdy. I didn't like it. It was yucky for me.
I don't like most of the things he does.
But that was funny. Yeah, so I do want someone that is a little more accurate off the tee. And I was looking at driving distance and accuracy numbers. Someone that I actually hate to say popped to the top was Stuart Sink. He is surprisingly long off the tee and surprisingly accurate off the tee. So I have historically, if you've watched the show at all, not been a Stuart Sink fan. He killed me the week that he won. But I probably am going to be putting Stuart Sink in my roster so that he can kill me when he's in my rosters like he killed me when he's not in my rosters. So
that sounds like fun. Yeah. Talk about the greens.
Yeah, I think you need a high green and regulation percentage, so I think that goes hand in hand with driving accuracy because I don't think you're going to be making greens in regulation if you aren't hitting fairways here. And then, the Paspalum greens are a unique putting surface that we don't see at a lot of courses. I jokingly put down here the two other courses that I was able to find that have this greens. And Hovland won in 2020 at the Mayakoba, and he won the Puerto Rico Open in 2019. Brandon Grace won the 2020 version of that event.
If you ever watch the show, if you ever listen to what I say on the show.
I actually like the international players quite a bit this week, so I wouldn't mind playing Brandon Grace. But I wouldn't read too much into Hovland being the winner at two of those events. Those are historically weak fields. Most of the higher ranked golfers are taking those weeks off, or I think playing in the WGC during the Puerto Rico week. The WGC Mexico, I think. So I probably wouldn't read too much into that. But but it is just kind of a fun thing to see that Hovland has actually putted pretty well here. The other thing they say is they're a little bit slower greens, and so someone like Justin Thomas, who has been struggling with his putter, this may be like a get-right opportunity. I don't want to say like it's necessarily easier greens, but at least it's a change from some of the surfaces we've seen recently where Justin Thomas has just been absolutely lighting the world up with his approach play and then bleeding all the strokes he gains right back out his putter.
There you go. The field, 156 golfers, top 70. So that's just 5 more golfers than usual.
Yeah, a little bit different than normal.
I'm told by my brain it says it's normally top 65.
And our field is a little bit different than normal because it is the PGA Championship. We have 20 tour professionals, and so as well as former champions, as well as some top dollar winning European players, I believe. And so there are some lower ranked players that probably can just be X'd out. Like I wouldn't imagine more than one or any of the PGA Tour professionals will make the cut. So that effectively makes the field about 125 players. And so with 70 making the cut out of 125, we're going to see a significantly higher, almost like WGC type field where WGCs don't have cuts. So the bills are a little bit different.
That makes total sense. Now talk a little bit about roster construction. I will take a nap.
All right, Ricky takes a nap. So this week there are some of the largest tournaments on DraftKings. So the Millie Maker is not the 400,000 player version of the Millie Maker we had for the players, but it is 177,000 players. The Drive the Green I think is 145 or maybe 135,000 players. The Birdie is also in the 118, 120 range, I believe. And so all of the tournaments have inflated. No, you can definitely find smaller prize pools or smaller field tournaments. So if you want to play your normal smaller field tournament, definitely find those on DraftKings. But what I'm going to talk about is specific to extremely large field roster construction. So in order to win one of these tournaments, you need to get a significant amount of leverage. And by leverage, I mean players that aren't owned. I guess I'll go down there. There are 2 ways to get leverage. So the first is going to be raw ownership leverage, which is what I was going to initially talk about, which is playing low-owned players. So, rostering someone that's 5% owned versus someone that's 20% owned. If that 5% owned player wins, you only need to compete with 5% of the rosters versus that 20% owned player wins. You're still playing a tournament with 20% of the rosters. So think of it as removing the winner, and then whatever percentage of players have him, you're effectively playing a 5-player tournament rather than a 6-player tournament versus that player. And so the other way to get leverage is your total pool of ownership if you're MMEing versus the entire field's ownership. So, for instance, I decided I wanted to play Victor Hovland this week, but the field has him at 25%. And so if I want leverage as to Victor Hovland, I need to have more than 25% of Victor Hovland. So if I roster him at 50% of my lineups, I will have 50% of my 150 lineups. I will have 75 Victor Hovland lineups. And if the field is rostering him at 20%, then I have that many more Victor Hovland combinations than any other player. So those are kind of the 2 ways to get leverage: is either your raw leverage, just playing low on players, and then your specific player pool leverage versus the field in getting more combinations of a specific player. So I've got a couple specific examples.
Next.
This one? I think so. So most of the projection sites you'll see will give you a weighted total of ownership. So you roster 6 golfers that all have 20%, and it'll show you they have 120% total projected ownership. And that's sort of useful, but I think the total weighted ownership that is multiplying has a significantly more useful benefit to assessing the leverage you're gaining in a large field tournament. So I have 2 teams down here. Ricky, I'm gonna you ready?
It's right here.
So yep, we're gonna give you an example. Team A is 6 golfers, all 20% projected owned, for a total of 120%. Team B is 2 golfers at 50% and 4 golfers at 5%, for also a total of projected ownership of 120%. So you go to build your lineups and you limit your projected ownership to 120%, and you could get either of these lineups. Do you have any feeling which one's more likely to be duplicated?
I think they're the same.
You think it's the same likelihood to be duplicated?
I mean, that's what the 120% would mean to me.
Okay, so they have the same total weighted ownership, but they certainly do not have anywhere near the same chance of being duplicated. So how do we get there? And then how do we know when we have enough leverage? And so our example continues on the next slide.
Next slide.
So on here, Team A is significantly more likely to be duplicated. And so using the Millie Maker as just our number, I'll show you an example of how the math works, but you can change the number of runners to fit any tournament you're playing just to kind of assess whether you have enough leverage. We'll talk about here in a minute. But Team A, you multiply the 20% ownerships by each other. So if we have 177 runners and 20% own player 1, we're now down to 20% of that 177 have remaining rosters. Multiply that by each successive 20% owned player, and you're down to 11.39 entries in a 177,000 player pool would have the same lineup. Whereas Team B, where you have two 50% owned guys followed by the 4 or 5% owned guys, you actually only have a little over a quarter of an entry matching you. And so the Team B is significantly less likely to be duplicated, has significantly more leverage than Team A, despite rostering 2 players at 50% ownership. And so in this, like I said, we use the Millie Maker as an example, but if you change your field size, you can scale it to whatever tournament you're playing in. And effectively, I'm looking for less than or equal to or near 1 to ensure I have, quote, enough leverage. So in my Team B example, it may be almost too much leverage in that it's only 0.28 entries. I don't need quite that much leverage. Maybe I could change one of those 0.5 guys to a 10% owned guy. And that would, actually, I think that would put me at 0.56. But
that's how math works.
yeah, and so I could actually do that twice. I could change 2 of those 0.5 guys for 0.10 guys. So ensuring a higher total percentage ownership than Team A, but with a still more leverage than Team A and a better chance of finishing at the top of a GPP. Now, to be clear, this also ensures you a better chance of finishing at the bottom of a GPP. What it doesn't ensure you is finishing in the middle of a GPP. It limits it basically gives you one of the tails more often than you end up in the middle. So you can certainly end up with a median outcome, but it gives you a better chance of one of the tails, which in a big field GPP is effectively what we're looking for.
Yep, and Keaton's been really big on this lately, and as you can tell by the fact that I had no idea what the answer to this question was, I have not been, and that's why he wins and I don't.
It's just something to think about. You can build it in Excel. I have it in Excel, and I test most of my lineups before I go. So I just have a field for the total number of players in the contest I'm entering, and then for all 6 golfers, and I'll just real quick test, like spot test most of my lineups to make sure I don't have any like egregious like lineups that are just going to be duplicated 10 ways in the Millie Maker. So I guess backing up, the reason you don't want to be duplicated is because when you win, you want to win the $1 million. That's the name of the game, or the 100K, whatever it is.
Nobody wants $550,000.
Well, it lowers your EV of any roster if you're duplicated. Now, you can get different by just leaving $200 or $300 on the table. If you just limit every one of your rosters to only build max salary of $49,700, you will get different than the vast majority of the field. I think something like 90% of rosters use either all or $100 less than their salary. So if you want to get just, quote, different, you can do it by leaving money on the table. What we just talked about previously gets you leverage. And so you want both leverage and being different. And I think by ensuring a number less than or equal to 1, you get both leverage and differentiation. On to the next slide.
Differentiation. I think it might have been the word you were
Yes.
Favorites. The favorite is the favorite is the favorite is the favorite, and it's Rory this week.
It is, coming off a win at Quail Hollow.
Yeah, and he is very expensive.
And the defending champion at this course. Not really the defending champion because he won in 2012, but it was the last time we played this course.
Yeah, looking down, yeah, I mean, I don't have strong feelings about any of this. I like Spieth's price compared to the people around him. Yeah,
Spieth and Victor Hovland are the two that are just like, to me, mispriced for their salary. And Daniel Berger, honestly.
Yeah,
Daniel Berger's way too cheap. Those are the guys that are just too cheap. Honestly, the other guy I really, really like on this list, and I hate to say it, is Will Zalatoris. I've plugged him every week, and I bet him every week. And I will continue to bet him every week. I think his game just shapes up well for this course, especially if we're going to see like a -6 winner. I think he can grind out a win. His iron play is absolutely outstanding, And he's someone I can see grinding out a low score win.
Keegan Bradley, we saw he was T3 here in 2012.
Playing outstanding.
He's been playing really, really well lately. Super cheap at 7,300.
He will be
Trinidad
chalk.
is very similar as well. I mean, it's
Keegan's going to be chalk, but I really like Keegan this week. It seems like he's found his putter. He's talked about finding his putter, and
he just talks about it all
despite
the time.
like guys saying they've done stuff, and then they look at the numbers and they haven't actually done stuff. Keegan's actually found his putter over like the last 5 rounds, 6 rounds, or 6 tournaments. So
there you go.
I'm gonna probably get over on Keegan, even though he's gonna be pretty highly owned.
There you go. And speaking of highly owned,
top of the board.
we start with highly priced.
I don't know anyone up here who's actually going to be super high owned except for Spieth would be my guess.
I agree with
Rory may catch some ownership just because he's coming off a win and like everyone loves Rory, right?
I do love Rory.
Yeah. I'm of these guys. I'm probably going
Justin
back to
Thomas.
Rahm the most and Justin
Thomas.
Thomas. Those are going to be the two I was going to say. JT just needs to find his putter and he'll win this tournament, right? If he like even is a 0 putt, meaning he doesn't lose strokes or gain strokes putting, I think he wins this tournament.
I think on this page I like Spieth, I like JT, I like Rory. But Rory and JT are a little bit more expensive than I would like.
There is softer pricing with this being a major, but it's still a lot. I mean, the difference between Rory and Spieth, that $1,400 is huge in roster construction.
Lot. And as we get to the 9K range, I think like Morikawa 9,800. I know he hasn't played great lately, but like,
I mean, he's Justin Thomas, right? If he is elite with his irons, he is elite tee to green. He is garbage with a putter. If he could, I mean, he's another player that when he finds a putter, he'll win a tournament. So, if you want to gamble on dudes that need to find a putter, plug Justin Thomas and Morikawa into your lineups and pray that they both can make some putts.
Yeah, Xander also is pretty cheap this week.
Xander's so consistent. Like, he will finish in the top 10 of this tournament, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just will.
I really like Patrick Reed as usual. I don't like Patrick Reed. I like playing Patrick Reed.
I think Patrick Reed honestly has a good...
correct way to say it?
Yeah. You do roster Patrick Reed a lot.
I do.
This is a good week for it, I think, though. I think he sets up well for this course. He's not super long off the tee, but he is... One, he shows up better at big tournaments. We've always seen Patrick Reed show up in big events. And two, I think his like scrambling. If I'm 20 yards out and I've got to make my shot, like I'm confident that he can do it, right? I think he is very good with his irons and very good with his short wedges. And if he ends up like on a lot of these second shots, I think he can put himself in a position to not have to make some of the heroic putts that some of the other guys may have to make.
And speaking of good with their irons, Sanjay at 8,300.
The other guy we just didn't even mention there in this last group, and I think almost everyone is doing that, is Hideki. Coming off a Masters
I don't
win,
know what to do with him.
he played okay last week. He actually like struck the ball pretty well. No one has mentioned Hideki. I watch a lot of content, and literally Hideki just is not getting mentioned.
I mean, I mean, he's good. 9,400 is not bad.
He just showed he can win. I mean, but is he really going to win back-to-back majors?
No.
Like, yeah, he's not. But also, like, I really want to roster Hideki because I missed out last time.
I don't know. But this range again, I think we kind of talk about it every. So we kind of talk about it every one of these where like when the price is a little bit cheaper and like you get people like Berger at 8,700 and Zalatoris who's been like creeping up every week.
And Finau, who can get second like on any course.
Yeah. Scotty, who I pump a lot. Obviously Sanjay, who I pump a lot.
In a tough course, I love Fitzpatrick. I think he can play a tough course really well. I think a lot of the international players can play a tough course. 8,000?
Yeah. And he hasn't played great lately, but like 8,000.
He hasn't played well at majors, but he lit the world on fire in round 4 at the Masters. It's too cheap. I also like Justin Rose down there. I know you're scarred on Justin Rose.
I'm still sad about him withdrawing on the day of the Players, but I think that's probably too cheap for him, especially the way was it the Masters he played really well.
He was seventh at the Masters, I believe.
One of the big tournaments.
Yeah, I believe he finished seventh at the Masters.
Since he withdrew the players.
And then Usti is someone we see like show up for majors and play in the States and play pretty well most of the time. So I wouldn't mind playing Usti.
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, like you can't really go too wrong with it, like most of this range. Like look at those cuts.
There's no one that I don't like. I mean, there's no one here where I'm like, I'm not. They're not in my player pool. Honestly, I think at varying weights, all of these guys will be in my player pool. If I cut anyone, it was probably gonna be Sanjay. He just hasn't played super well. But 8,300 for Sanjay is cheap, so it's tough. But yeah, that's a tough range to decipher because they're all really good plays.
If I was gonna pick one to cut, it would be Fleetwood.
Ooh, I like Fleetwood this week, and I also like Cam Smith if we have a tough week. I think Cam Smith could win a -6 tournament.
And I mean, he's in South Carolina. It's not at Myrtle Beach, but the mullet will definitely be in play.
It'll be a big play.
It will definitely be in play in South Carolina. And then the 7,500 to 7,900 range. I don't love it as much, but there's still some play here.
I don't love it as much as I love the next range we're gonna get to.
Okay.
I
Which
think
is like
Answer
50 pages
is
long.
like all the golfers. Yeah, I think Answer, Leishman are interesting in this range. Leishman for low ownership, hopefully. Guys that I think will catch ownership in this range. Sam Burns is going to be incredibly popular. The salary got released before he finished second last week, and right after he finished first the week before. Burns is coming off a 1 and a 2 is really interesting. Burns is someone I roster a lot, and he's hurt me a lot of the season. He's done well, obviously, for me the last couple weeks, but yeah, Burns is interesting down there. I think he's going to be high owned, but how do you not roster a guy coming off a 1 and a 2?
You just don't do it.
You just X him out, huh?
Yeah. I really like Neiman here. I really like Coco. I think we talked about. We might have talked about before we started.
Yeah, Joaquim's interesting there. He plays really well in tough courses and can keep a low ball flight if you do get wins.
7,800 is pretty cheap.
Yeah, I actually like the Neiman.
Because was it the Masters? He was like $9,000, wasn't he?
I can't remember.
He was like high eights at least. Anyway, nonetheless, not important. Jason Day, long ball hitter.
I will not see Jason Day this week.
Played like absolute crap lately. Probably won't have a lot of them, but interesting. Sergio is somebody that's interesting to me because again, he is a long ball hitter. He's played well at places like the Masters.
He's another player that's absolutely garbage with his putter, but good everywhere else.
I probably won't roster him at all, but I just wanted to mention it.
No, I mean, if he's another player that if he could learn how to putt, like he would just win tournaments left and right. So
we've been saying that for 30 years.
Yeah,
so.
He's not going to learn to putt now.
And then here's a range.
In very small font, we have a lot of guys that are very interesting. The guys here that are going to be uber chalk are going to be Charlie Hoffman, Keegan. I don't think Siwoo is going to be a lot of chalk, but he'll get a little ownership just because it's a Pete Dye course and Siwoo kind of gets that narrative. But otherwise, I think down here you get some actual serious value and some guys that can win some GPPs. So I will have a lot of exposure to this range. Two guys off the top, Harmon and Wallace, are neither extremely long off the tee, but they're both very accurate off the tee. I think I will have more than my share of those two guys. Max Homa is another player that's played really well.
A lot.
Yeah, and I probably will have more than my share of Homa as well. Because I'm just looking to pivot off the Hoffman and Bradley chalk. Like, I love Bradley, and I'll probably have a decent amount of Bradley. But I do need some other guys down in this range. So those would be the first two guys I'd look at. And then Tringale.
I was going to say, what do you want to talk about that? Because, like, I feel like for such a long time he was on such an upward trajectory, and then all of a sudden they just, like, threw him at 7,100.
I honestly am not sure why he's 7,100
Kokrak's the same way, I feel.
And those are both actually guys that are looking like low ownership, which is incredible. And I will be rostering the heck out of Tringale, Kokrak, Kirk, Homa. Grillo down there has been popping a little bit. And then Bobby Mack. We saw him at the Masters with that colorful scorecard.
Up and down.
Yeah.
There's a lot of up and down.
But also he's long off the tee and someone that I probably will take some flyer exposure to in GPPs.
Yeah. Somebody that I noted that kind of feels low price is Kuchar. Not somebody who jumps off in like the amount of fantasy points he scores, but like has been performing really well.
He's been playing better of late, yeah.
Exactly. And at 7,000, he's been creeping up into the 8s lately. So 7,000 is substantially cheaper than he has been.
He's a consistent ball striker too. So if you're trying to play the narrative that distance doesn't matter as much as accuracy, like I think he fits in the Harmon Wallace.
Yeah. And he's somebody who's shown that he can play hard course as well. The other
like
person,
Patrick Reed plays hard course as well.
There we go. The other person that I like in this range is Horschel. Somebody who we've seen kind of be erratic in general.
Just an erratic human being.
But at 7,200, like he's getting into a lot of very good value. A couple months ago, for some reason, he just like kept creeping up to like $9,000
when he was on that win and then back top 5.
But even at the Masters, he played like he had like a meltdown, but he still played pretty well. And at 7,200,
that's all you
want. You kind of have to live with the erratic. Below $7,000, I also wrote down. That is what I did while you were talking about your strategy and stuff.
Nice.
And that's why I wasn't paying attention. Was all my sub 7 guys that I like.
Oh wow, you like a lot of sub 7 guys. I'll let you take the lead here.
Sub 7 guys.
All right, let's hear Ricky's sub 7.
Number
guys.
1.
I assume they're all journeymen, right?
The man, the myth, the legend, at $6,000. The man with the beard and the beer gut. And everything you ever want, John Daly. I'm going to have none of. I'm not going to touch him. If this was a seniors tour event where he got his golf cart, then maybe.
He did almost win a Champions event the other weekend. So
if they give him a golf cart, he's got the arthritis in his knees.
Oh my god!
And he can't walk anymore. I actually think he might get a golf cart in the. Does he get it for this one?
I don't know. Former champions.
I know he didn't play the British because of that last year because they didn't give him because they wouldn't give him like an exemption to have a car. No, neither here nor there. Definitely no. But
saw a video of him driving a ball off a beer can earlier today. It was fantastic.
Legend. Nonetheless, former PGA winner, no less. That's why he's here. Yeah, exactly. But speaking of former PGA winners who actually could do really well and has been playing erratically good, is Phil. I think he'll probably be decently owned at 6,700. But it definitely makes sense. He hits the ball.
Did y'all see him shoot -7 at the Quail on Monday?
And
Thursday?
And you think about Quail, like it might not line up bit for bit with this course, but it is a PGA.
It's long and it's tough.
It is a PGA Championship course that so it's going to be similar in that regard. But I do like 6,700 for Phil. I also like. Let's see who else I like. I like Wyndham Clark at 6,600.
New addition to the field.
New addition to the field. He's played pretty darn well the last few weeks.
Did you say he got an ace in the practice round again?
I'm pretty sure he got an ace in the practice round.
That's very cool.
Fratelli, 6,500. Don't hate that.
Don't hate Fratelli. He's long off the tee. I like Fratelli.
You know who I like every week? Sebastian Munoz, 6,600. Gooch, also 6,600. Not bad plays.
Decent off the tee as well.
Brandon Grace, who we talked about earlier.
Winner at Puerto Rico.
Winner at Puerto Rico. Has played pretty well. Probably won't have a bunch of him, but
he knows how to put on
it at 60.
Palma.
Sure. Don't hate him at 6,800. Brendan Todd is somebody who, at 6,700, is a pretty long ball striker. Don't hate him on that. And somebody that I think will make the cut, Steve Sugar. 6,500.
I mean, at 6,500, you're happy with a made cut.
But that being said, probably won't have a lot of them. I actually do like Phil. I do like Munoz.
I mean, imagine if Phil had just shot -7 every day and just finished Quail at -28.
Yeah, if he just did what Stuart Sink did in that stupid tournament.
Every morning I'm like, okay, this is the day. Stuart Sink will just shoot like +4 today, right? He's like, nope, -6. Nope, -6.
I hate it. Anyways, you also noted. I did not note the 3 guys that you noted because I didn't want to outshine your shine, man.
Yeah,
I do like Ryan Palmer though.
He's too cheap. He's played too well. He's too cheap.
You noted Charles. You had Charles in your
I had
your
Charles
Shane Grant last week.
Yeah, and he was also part of my my sleeper pool. And then Thomas Peters is another guy I had last week. I'm going to go back to. He missed the cut on the number last week at AT&T, which was just an absolute birdie fest craziness. So I'm going to kind of just disregard the fact that he missed the cut last week, and maybe he's getting acclimated from. I think he's Belgian, coming over from Belgium. So.
Sure.
Now we should be ready to roll and take down the PGA.
Perfect. Favorite golfers this week.
Yeah.
I don't see John Daly on that list.
I will, depending on ownership, I'm going to have exposure to probably all of these guys. These are the lists that I probably am going to try to get over on all these guys compared to the field. And so, I mean, you can see the list here. These guys we've talked about the whole way through. I don't think there's anyone here we haven't really touched on. But I will probably try to be over on all these guys.
What is your percentage of John Daly going to be?
A hard negative. Can I get negative John Daly? Can they?
Hater.
I'm going to have 0 John Daly.
God, I want to make the cut.
I think, honestly, the cheapest, I haven't looked too hard down lower, but I think that 6,800, that Charles Peters range is probably the lowest I will have guys.
I don't, yeah, makes sense.
I'm not sure. What were some of your 65 guys?
Munez, 66.
I might have Munez,
Phil,
maybe
67.
a little bit of Gooch.
Yeah.
A little bit of Fratelli.
65.
Okay.
I like Stricker a lot. He played well at the Players.
Okay.
As that late alternate jump in.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, I can see. I might have to reconsider some of my sub 6K guys or some 7K guys.
Let's be fair. I'm always wrong. Nonetheless, yeah. So I noted some people as we walked through that I liked on top of John Daly. JT, obviously. I think we talked a little about Spieth. I like Xander. I like Morikawa. I like Patrick Reed. I like Nyman.
Yeah, I think all of those are
good picks, too. I say it different every week. Is it Nyman or Neiman?
I say Neiman. I say Joaquin Neiman, but...
that sounds right.
Yeah, I don't know. I like all those picks, too, and I will certainly have all of those guys in my pool this week. So good luck, everybody. If you're playing, I will have approximately 225 lineups with 0 John Daly. So
100% of John Daly.
Yes, 225 John Daly lineups.
Will you have Eric Almirola in any of your lineups?
I will probably roll out Eric. He will probably crash in the wall, but I will roll out Eric Almirola. Tune into our NASCAR show where you can hear Ricky tout dudes that will crash into the wall.
Yeah, it's basically a guarantee every week.
It's a crazy race this week, though. Seriously, tune in this week. I'm going to learn a lot about the course of the Americas. What is it called?
Circuits of the Americas.
Circuits of the Americas. I knew it was COTA.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a cool weekend. It's going to be a complete crap fest for DFS because they're qualifying on Sunday.
Yeah, I saw that. That should be really fun.
Our show is going to be, I don't even know what we're going to do in the first show. But nonetheless, we will have a show. We will talk at least about the people. We'll talk about how Chase Elliott's really good.
Talk about Brad Keselowski going to be an owner and a new driver for Roush next year.
Potentially.
Oh, it's happening.
Potentially.
Bob tweeted it out. Bob confirmed this afternoon. It's happening. Okay, but that's a completely different show, and all you golf people are very confused about NASCAR talk.
Bye, everybody. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, etc., etc., etc.